It's time now for us to cross over for that breakfast meeting, and the welcome address is about to hit your screens. We'll take it from there. It's the Graphic Business Stanbic breakfast meeting. Let's cross over now and get all the details.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my pleasure to welcome you here this morning to our first virtual Graphic Business Stanbic Bank breakfast meeting. Why is this virtual? It is virtual because COVID-19 is here, it is real, and it is impacting us at significant levels across this country and all over the globe. It is for this reason that we are in a virtual mode, and it's also for this reason and purpose that we assembled this body of experts to help us look at how this country, Ghana, can leverage the inherent opportunities that are presently available to us in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic, and what it is that we can do, raising our heads into the future, standing firmly on the ground today to make this country self-sufficient, self-reliant, and an economy that we pride ourselves on. The breakfast meeting, as we have known it, is a very interactive session. And what is it that it seeks to do? Simple. We come around, gather the experts to elicit some of the top practical and pragmatic ideas that can help us address some of the challenges that we encounter in our society, be it economic, financial, political, social, across other sectors of our industry. This morning, we're hoping to do the same. And when the experts have spoken, it is our mandate, as the graphic brand is known for, to send forth these thoughts that we would gather to the various stakeholders of our land to help shape policy that we can use to guide this nation going forward. So this is what it is that we are seeking to do this morning. And I believe that with these experts that we've gathered, and with the audience member networks sitting at home and in your offices, wherever you may be, you would also contribute so we can filter through these ideas that we come across and share them so we can help Ghana move forward. Importantly, COVID-19 is real, it is happening, and we need to observe all the protocols wherever we may be. For us at the Graphic Communications Group, we are 70 years old and very young. COVID has affected us, and we've pivoted also quite nicely, and so we are digital. Beyond the physical papers that you would see on the newsstands that our vendors would distribute, we also have our digital web interface, the graphic.com.gh, and then our Graphic News Plus that form a significant part of our own portfolio that is still evolving. I believe that with these experts that we've gathered, we would hear a lot more that would help impact this society. Digital is a big part of it. We've seen it happen at a significant level in our schools, for example, and even in the way government is run. This meeting is a digital one as well. And we hope that out of these interactions, we'll see a lot more ideas that will help us take this conversation forward and help Ghana grow. So on this note, I welcome you all, and I'll hand you over to the experts. And I believe that they will do justice to this assignment that we've been given. And those of you at home would also make meaningful contributions to make this a worthy interaction. I thank you.
I think that I'll ask the small crowd here to clap again for Mr. Atuafo He's MD Graphic Communications Group. Such a wonderful presentation and open remark there. I remember one time when Larry King was doing a commercial or a run for his show on CNN, and this guy was over 60 years and he's talking about the fact that he's just started. Graphic is 70 years, and Mr. Stafford says they are young at heart. We look forward to that young Graphic becoming younger and growing on later. Thank you so much, Mr. Affol, Managing Director, Graphic Communications Group. This is the Graphic Stanbic Breakfast Meeting. There's another great partner on board this whole program, and it has to be Stanbic Bank, a very strong bank in Ghana here. And of course, this program couldn't have happened without them being on board. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome another strong gentleman. I'll call him Malko Alfajinu of Stanbic Bank to give us some short remark here. Let's show some love to him, please.
Thank you, my brother. A very good morning to everyone. Good morning to our listeners, to all the wonderful people who've always been part of this program and who've kept this program over the years to the level it's gotten to today. We are in unusual times, and I bring you greetings even as I recognize the wonderful people we have here. Of course, MD of Graphic, Mr. Vesha Shago, Professor Osei Sibe, and Professor and Mr. Osei Bunso, the CEO of Private Enterprise Foundation, whom we have with us here virtually. I bring you greetings from Alasan Andani. He really wishes he could have been here, and he's been very critical to this program, to the growth of this program. And I also bring you greetings from Kwame Nasmani, our incoming MD. And we actually are looking forward even to the next session where these ideas, these conversations we start here will take us to a new level. We are in a unique situation as a country, and not just a country. I mean, I come from Stanbic Bank, where we say we are African to the core. Now, by extension, it means we are Ghanaian to the core. We are not just African to the core, we are human at heart, and we are driven to win. And if there is any situation where the stakes are so high and victory is a must, it's today, it's now. The global supply chains have been disrupted beyond reason. We've had to live with situations that previously were unfathomable, but now are a new reality. And in the midst of all the confluence of difficulties, we have opportunities that have never existed in the last 100 years. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, there were conversations about the structure of our economy. There were conversations about the difficulties in changing the economy to ensure that we have a nation which is able to leverage its huge array of natural resources in a manner that the poor and the vulnerable will be taken care of, that the people of this country will have belief, that people would have a country that supports them. We have a solid social basket that provides opportunities for the good people of Ghana. Maybe what COVID has done is to give us the opportunity to realign, to reset, to go back to the fundamentals, and to get this country back on the path of progress, of belief, and of confidence of the majority of people in this country. And that's why today's session is very important. I look at the panel, I look at the brain power, and I believe that this should be the beginning of a conversation that should make a difference in this country. We are in a period where we see several sea changes. We believe that we are going to see a sea change in our economy, and we are going to get the Ghana we all desire. That is the essence of this platform. We've done it over the years, but we are at a stage where we need to, as it were, pivot to a much higher level. That is our expectation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Malko Afajano with Stanbic Bank for that wonderful presentation there. This is the Graphic Stanbic Breakfast Meeting where we're looking at how we can diversify our economy in the midst of COVID-19. What should we be doing as an economy to minimize the shocks that this would actually come with? And that is why Graphic Stanbic Bank is putting together the discussion with some very excellent experts from the economy, from people who have had banking experience and also worked on several economies, and also from the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a short commercial break and we'll be right back as I introduce my panel for this discussion for the Graphic Stanbic Breakfast Meeting.
feeling of joy when you know you are home, where you sleep in luxury and comfort.
Looking at how to diversify the economy in the midst of COVID-19. Without wasting much time, let me call my distinguished panelists who are going to join us to have a discussion this morning on how we can diversify the economy. He's a senior country partner at accounting firm PricewaterhouseCoopers. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Vish Ashagbo. Round of applause with our small crowd that we also have here. The next person to join us on stage is Professor Eric Osesibe. He is an associate professor of economic and dean of international programs at the University of Ghana. One of the finest economists that you can talk about in Ghana. And also no one here. He was my lecturer at the University of Ghana, Legon, a brilliant lecturer and a very hard and disciplinarian as well. Thank you so much for these distinguished panelists who have joined us here for this discussion as you look at diversifying the economy. And also Nanam Osei Bonsu. You know, we're talking about diversifying the economy. Here, we're also diversifying the whole program in the midst of COVID-19 as we have this whole webinar connecting with Nana Osei Bonsu. He's the chief executive of the Private Enterprise Federation. He'll be joining us via Zoom in terms of his contribution to this whole program. So without wasting more time, let me call upon Mr. Vish Ashagbo to give his open remarks in terms of the presentation, and then we'll tell you how things will go. So I'll have to call you on stage for this presentation first, and later we'll move into our discussion. So you have to join me here in terms of your opening presentation, and then later we'll move into a discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, George, and good morning, distinguished guests, mostly virtual. It's a pleasure to be here once again to share some few thoughts with you. So I just have a few comments perhaps to kickstart the discussion, and the topic really is the required structural changes and the new growth drivers of the economy. At least those are the few comments I'd like to start with. And then, of course, as we progress the conversation, we can speak more broadly about the opportunities that are now available to us, the risks in the light of COVID, and what we can do about that to shore up our economy. In terms of our economy in Ghana, I think we're all familiar with the structure of the economy. I believe Professor Osesibe will speak a little bit more about that, so I'll not dwell on that. But in essence, we've been on a journey for quite a few years now to try and diversify our economy. We have been significantly focused on the export of primary commodities, whether in the agricultural sector or in the mineral sector. So we continue to spend a lot of our energies on cocoa production and export, on gold mining, production and export, and perhaps more recently, oil and gas. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, except that I think we've all identified over time that there's a need to increase the value addition of these primary commodities so that our economy can be stronger. In recent times, we've also been focused, at least in terms of the structure of the economy, on the services sector. Again, that has served us well over time, but if you see what happened in the light of COVID, where the economy actually took a little bit of a hit, it was the services sector which took the greatest hit. And the projections, at least at the half-year stage, was that the services sector would actually contract this 2020. We may be fortunate enough to actually avoid a contraction because we're getting better news day by day in terms of the state of the economy. But that's another sector where perhaps we need to strengthen, we need to diversify a little bit more so that when we're hit by unexpected events, we can reorganize ourselves and have more of a buffer and more of a cushion to support the overall economy. The other thing we've spoken about over years, and in all of this, by the way, I'm not saying anything new. These are things that we've discussed over years, except that COVID has brought it home to us. Because the other thing we've said over years is there's a need for us to reduce our reliance on imports, right? We know the implication of that in terms of what it means for demand on Forex and other things for the economy. But COVID really brought it home because of the threats around disruptions in supply chains, et cetera, et cetera. We saw different countries also moving to look after themselves. Fortunately, most of the threats did not materialize to the extent that we originally feared. But I think the learning, or one of the learnings from COVID, is that perhaps this is the time where we might think about how we also rebalance the self-reliance versus import dependency equation. We spent a lot of time previously talking about globalization. I think globalization is still relevant. It's still a good thing. If we can learn from other countries, so be it. If we can buy goods and services cheaper from other countries, so be it. But again, what we've been through tells us that we must also move a little bit more towards the self-reliance and being able to sustain ourselves in emergency situations, unexpected developments such as hit us with COVID. There's just two other points I'd like to make us in terms of introductory remarks. The first one is technology and the use of technology. We're having this meeting digitally. I think we've done quite well as a country in terms of the digital journey, in terms of moving things digital. But I think we still have some way to go in terms of drilling that down to a wider group of people in our population. Because digital innovation technology can be applied to various sectors of the economy. I spoke about agric, I've spoken about industry, there's manufacturing. There are today tools and solutions available that can be developed in all of these industries. And COVID, I think, gives us the opportunity to accelerate our digital transformation across the economy so that, again, we can add more value and perhaps mitigate some of the threats that come with COVID and other perhaps infectious diseases in terms of human contact, etc. My final point in terms of my introductory remarks is the upskilling of our human capacity. At the end of the day, the economy emanates or relies on what the people can do, what the people know, the kind of skills the people have, and how the people themselves can deploy those to generate value for the country. So much as we are on the right track, I think, again, COVID tells us that sufficient or additional increased investment needs to go into upskilling as many of our people as possible so that together we can diversify this economy, make it more robust so that in the light of threats and unexpected events like COVID, we can continue to be strong. So, George, I'll leave it there for now, and then as the conversation progresses, we can pick up the points in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Veshashagbo, his senior country partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I'll be digging more from him. He's worked on a lot of companies whilst maintaining confidentiality. What does he see as the biggest challenge there for most companies during this COVID-19 times, and how are they re-strategizing going forward to ensure that they stay alive as a company? Let's hear from the private sector. Nano Sebunsu, he's Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation. We're talking about diversifying. Here we are also diversifying, trying to connect to him via Zoom. Whether it's coming from a secret location or a coded location, we don't know. Nano Sebunsu, thank you so much for joining us via Zoom and taking your contribution with respect to what you think we have to do to diversify the economy.
Ladies and gentlemen, and George and the team in Accra, I'm not in a secret location. I'm in a location though, but I'm available to you. Let me express my sentiments about what Bish spoke about, and I align myself to that. But there's another dimension to it, in the sense that the COVID had leveled the playing field grounds, that both government and private sector should be able to work together more closely in this era to make sure that the effects of the pandemic are addressed as we move forward. Policy of government in our environment drives everything. If the government policy is skewed in favor of foreign, in favor of dangling all our incentives to the foreign, the local businesses suffer. Taxes, public sector delivery to private sector. The inefficiencies in the public sector delivery services to the private sector is one of the detriments of our inability to do efficient private sector business. The Private Enterprise Federation, what we have been doing for the past few years is work with various public sector institutions, land use and spatial planning, the other institutions, GRA and others, to make sure that they have efficient service charters that will allow them to deliver to private sector quickly. Why is it necessary? Because if you're looking for a license and there's a delay, it costs us money. The cost of those things to private sector are the detriment that private sector cannot be competitive. I'm bringing this across because now we have a continental free trade agreement that everybody is touting that is going to be the blessings to private sector so far as trading across the borders. But you can only trade what you produce. If you don't produce, you can trade it. And if you're going to produce at expensive pricing, you price yourself out of the competition. So that public sector delivery, that becomes the bread and butter, makes it efficient for private sector to do their business, will allow us to compete in the African trade agreement. Now, we've always relied on exports, but there's no country that has a huge export potential or drive without a strong domestic market. Look at the United States, look at China. But we always disregard the local market and say, oh, let's export XYZ. Even though we don't know much about the export markets and the rights and the details over there, we always look at that, disregarding and neglecting our backyards. The private sector, when the COVID hit, what we did was, for the first time, and these are unusual times, as everybody's saying, we got together, PEF membership, the Foreign Trade Association, American Chamber of Commerce, United Kingdom Chamber of Commerce, German Commerce, everybody, we all got together as private sector, did some survey as to the effect on our private sector businesses, delivered the message to government. We have now set up what we call West Africa Private Sector COVID-19 platform, where we dialogue every week, representation from the Minister of Finance, Minister of Health, Noguchi, FD, and others. Working together in a PPP arrangement, a public-private partnership arrangement. Normally when you say PPP, people are looking at infrastructure. No, it's not always the infrastructure. It's a dialogue platform where we communicate among ourselves and government to let them know what is needed by the private sector to rejuvenate our businesses. So once we're doing that, now we have to look at the losses of jobs and businesses and incomes across board. How do we do the packages from government to influence the production capacities of business? And Vish even mentioned the 2 points that are very critical in this arena: financial muscle and the technical competencies of our people. Unless we build our capacities to do things the right ways, to do things efficiently, and at the pricing that is competitive, where somebody is borrowing at 33% in their community, in their country, we're borrowing at 30%. It's a mismatch. So once the government understands and appreciates that the private sector should be able to do business and pay taxes to government. You see, government is going to lose a tremendous amount of taxes basically because of the free trade, because they're going to reduce tariffs. But the local businesses will continue to pay taxes to the government. So now we did a research that was recently published on tax reduction and efficiency in the tax system. So what I'm talking about is a dialogue platform, consistent engagement of public, private, government policy framework, regulatory framework, and the private sector capacity to be able to do. Unless we do that, and it's all anchored in taking advantage of our domestic market, because the imports that are coming in, they may not come because of the COVID. They may need them in their own environment. The export markets that we were touting may not be materializing because they wouldn't need it from us because they don't trust the COVID impact on the products that we're producing. So let's concentrate on where we know better. That is our local markets. And that is where we can get MS micro small institutions to be able to produce for that market. Now, Ghana's economy is almost 92% MSMEs. These are businesses, most of them informal sector. They need a capacity, they need a handholding, they need a technical assistance. So that PPP arrangement I'm talking about is for government to recognize that these are unusual times. What do we do better for businesses to be able to take advantage, generate the jobs, opportunity, the wealth, and then the government revenue that is needed? So for the time being, I think I'll end up here.
Nana Bonsu, he says he's not talking to us from a coded location, and we will all trace back to that location after this whole presentation. Thank you very much for that interesting discussion and presentation there about what the private sector want to do in terms of how we can diversify this whole economy. But we're getting back in here at the Labadi Beach Hotel for the graphic Stanbic breakfast meet, just look at how we can diversify the economy in the midst of all these challenges. I'll invite Professor Eric Osei-Sibe to also give us a presentation on how we can diversify the economy in the midst of COVID-19. And then after that, we move into our whole discussion, getting their views on the way forward. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor Eric Osei-Sibe.
Good morning. And first of all, let me thank you, Graphic and Stanbic, for inviting me here once again to discuss issues of national interest. I'm grateful. But I was just wondering, after these two seniors have spoken, I wonder what else I should be adding. In fact, Vish spoke everything that I wanted to say. So, all right. Thank you. We are here talking about diversifying our economy. And the key issue is, why is diversification important at this time? We've seen the havoc that the COVID did to our economy at the initial stages and across the globe, the heavy toll that it had on our production processes. As Vish mentioned, the COVID actually disrupted the entire global value chain. There was no good going in and out. Our production was disrupted. Food disruptions, medicine, pharmaceutical, nothing was happening. Foreign direct investment was not coming in, and so no new businesses were formed. We have tourism and hospitality sector really falling. Nothing really was happening because travel restrictions were imposed. We have no remittances coming in, and so people that depended on remittances suffered. Government revenue suffered because import was drastically affected. Government revenue fell drastically. At the same time, government expenditure on social expenses or social protection and health actually increased, increasing the budget deficits, and therefore government was compelled to, look elsewhere to finance the deficit. That means that our debt levels would have to increase, leading to very unsustainable levels. And so definitely if we are going to experience a second wave, then all these things are likely to befall us again. Our economy remains undiversified and therefore very vulnerable and volatile to global shocks. So obviously we need to diversify the economy. Now diversification just meaning that you're moving away from just a narrow range of products that you're heavily dependent on to a wide range of products that make your economy more resilient, more competitive, and being able to withstand shock. And so diversification is necessary to withstand shock. Without diversification, no economy can stand, because if you look at the structure of the economy, most of our products are within the primary sector. And with the primary sector, the prices and the production and everything along the value chain is largely dependent on what happens in the global market. So you want to diversify to have a way of shifting away from traditional production base to a more modern economy, which is more creative based, which is knowledge based, and which is less sensitive to global economic shock. And so the whole idea of diversification is moving away from the traditional way of our production processes to a modern economy that is highly productive, that is less volatile, and that really does not depend on the weather that much. And so it really makes your economy more resilient and be able to withstand whatever shocks that comes to you. But how are we able to diversify? We've been speaking about this. We've had very brilliant suggestions by Nana and Vish. But just to add a few things to what they have already mentioned is to look at the two approaches to diversification. One is about the productive base, and the other is the complementary services. Now, the productive base really is about either expanding the existing products that we have, that is upgrading the existing products so that we make it more competitive, we add value, and to be able to participate into the global value chain. And so you talk about our cocoa, you talk about our crude oil, you talk about our gold. How do we upgrade these products to add value? Will be to making sure that we process it further so that it doesn't remain at the primary stage. It will be able to other issues that tend to block trade facilitation within the sub-region. And so that is another way. The other form of diversification that is critical for us is to look at the key inputs, that is the factors of production. Now, one of the key factors of production that we are often lacking, because you cannot diversify if you don't have the right factors of production to produce. And key among them is capital. Nana alluded to that fact. Investment into capital accumulation or capital formation. How do we invest? You can only diversify if you have access to affordable and long-term loan, which we are lacking significantly. Interest rates remain high, although the country has done well by bringing it down. But I think that interest rates have to further come down. The COVID, one of the things, if there's any silver lining within the COVID, is the fact that it has changed the global financial situation. And it presents us a unique opportunity for Ghana to reduce its interest rates. Now, globally, there's a heightened tension. Interest rates are reducing even to zero levels. Our interest rate is still around, the policy rate is still around 14.5%. It is a good opportunity for us to take advantage to reduce interest rates, because the global financial system or condition is not that favorable. And so when the argument that when you reduce interest rate, you are likely going to have capital flight or capital outflows and externalization, this time, because of the risk, the systemic risk out there, potential investors do not have alternative. There are not much options. And so the time has come that we leverage the COVID situation to reduce interest rates significantly, to allow and to give small businesses and big businesses opportunity to have access to long-term affordable loans. That is critical. Because if you look at our savings, one of the issues that have to do with investment and capital accumulation is savings. Our saving rate, gross saving rate in this country is very low. It hovers around 15.5%, as against the average of about 30% in the lower middle income countries. And therefore, there's a huge saving gap, which then means that even when people or in private sector has the desire to diversify, they are often constrained by access to capital because the savings rate is very low. And therefore, we need to use this opportunity by pursuing more accommodative monetary policy, in my view, because this is the time for us to reduce interest rates. If we don't reduce interest rates and the COVID situation gets better, it is going to make it much more difficult because there's going to be a much better alternative for investors or for institutional investors to turn their funds to. And so my initial contribution or introductory remarks is we have to look at investment, domestic investment, ensuring that interest rates is reduced to provide affordable and long-term access to our private investors so that they will be able to buy the needed vintage capital and also be able to innovate to diversify the economy. So that is my initial strategy.
Thank you so much, Professor Eric Osei-Sibe, with that interesting presentation there. And we'll be very soon taking a short break and we'll get back to our main discussion for the day as we have a discussion, a Q&A with these experts in terms of their views and all the rest. Remember that you can also participate in this whole discussion in terms of our various social media platforms and our webinar in terms of bringing in your questions for me to throw to these guests for them to answer.
At Stanbic Bank, we combine a strong
sector. What do you want to be done for you in our quest to diversify the economy? But Professor Osei-Sibe made some interesting presentation, the bit about trying to reduce the cost of credit. But there's also the question about reducing the cost of credit. How do we ensure that the measures are put in place for these funds to be paid back? We are seeing the Q3 numbers of the commercial banks, and I'll be coming to Vish for more analysis on that one, whether NPLs is going to be a big problem for us or not. And also, maybe, should there be a deliberate policy in our quest to diversify the economy, or just like what in stock market they'll say, allow the correction to take place? We'll take a short break and be right back. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break as we look at how to diversify economy and what those who are managing the economy should be doing. What about the private sector? Be right back after this break.